Welcome back to Sip and Talk. You know, it's funny. The market's been absolutely roaring lately.
Yeah.
Feels like that dip just a few months back was almost a dream, doesn't it?
It really does. You never know what it's going to do next.
Exactly. Completely unpredictable. Which I guess is why we try to dig into what's behind the numbers, right?
Absolutely. Understanding the forces at play is, well, way more useful than just guessing the swings. And speaking of forces at play, we've got quite a mix today.
We do. So first we'll get a quick update on tariffs and, the general market mood right now. Then we're going to really dig into this whole thing with President Trump in Spain. Specifically why he seems so, let's say, annoyed about their NATO spending.
Yeah, that's a fascinating geopolitical piece. Lots going on there.
Definitely. And finally, we'll look at where the smart money seems to be flowing in the world of AI, based on pretty sharp insights from Co2, the investment firm.
Right. Should be interesting.
Okay, let's dive in. First up, tariffs, trade, that market roller coaster. What's the latest on the trade front? Seems like there's been some movement.
There has, yeah. Actually, some positive signs. A trade agreement was signed with China, which is, a pretty big step away from the earlier tensions.
Okay.
And get this, there's talk of an extremely large deal with India potentially coming up too.
Right.
So it looks like a real push towards maybe diversifying those trade relationships.
Wow, an extremely large deal with India. That could be huge.
Yeah.
It really feels like tariffs are being used as a major tool now. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick seems pretty big on them.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Lutnick sees them as like a core presidential power, not just a negotiation tactic. And the numbers kind of back that up. He mentioned they're bringing in something like $30 billion a month for the U.S.
$30 billion a month.
It's staggering, right? I mean, think about it. That's a huge chunk of revenue. It's not just about trade barriers. It's a serious income stream that gives the U.S. leverage.
Right. Changes the whole calculation.
Totally. And he apparently expects more deals to drop before July 9th deadline.
Wow. Okay. Busy times. So sticking with U.S. economic policy, we can't ignore President Trump's pretty strong words for Fed Chair Jay Powell.
No, he hasn't held back.
He seems to think Powell's decisions, especially on interest rates, have really hurt the economy.
Yeah, his argument is that by not lowering rates, Powell costs the economy hundreds of billions of dollars annually. That's a, very direct hit on the Fed's policy.
A huge number. But on the flip side, we are hearing some different signals about rate cuts possibly coming. Right?
We are, yeah. San Francisco Fed Chair Mary Daly sounded pretty optimistic about potential cuts this fall.
Right.
And the market seems to be thinking along those lines, too. The expectation seems to be like maybe 2 cuts this year and potentially 5 by the middle of 2026.
5 by mid-2026.
Yeah, so there's definitely anticipation building for looser monetary policy. Could give the economy another boost.
Interesting contrast there. And one more policy point. This Section 899 repeal the Treasury is pushing for, the retaliatory tax thing. What's the deal with that?
Right. Section 899. Basically, it's a rule that could penalize investment coming from countries that don't give the U.S. similar tax breaks. It's meant to be fair, but, it can also scare off foreign investment.
Ah, okay. So getting rid of it makes the U.S. more attractive for foreign money.
Exactly. It could smooth the path for more international capital to flow in, which is generally seen as a good thing for growth. And it sounds like it's pretty likely to happen.
Good to know. So all this capital, market optimism, that kind of leads us straight to AI, doesn't it? That seems to be the engine driving so much right now.
Oh, absolutely. It's undeniable. If you look at what's pushing the market up, it's overwhelmingly those big tech names tied into the AI ecosystem. You know the list. NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Meta, Apple, IBM, Oracle.
The giants.
The giants, yeah. They're the ones pulling the train right now.
And NVIDIA. I mean, what can you even say? Becoming the most valuable company in the world?
It's incredible. Just shot past Apple, shot past Microsoft, over $3.8 trillion market cap. It's just meteoric. And it's all built on them being the key supplier for AI hardware.
Really underscores how central AI has become. It's not just like a tech trend anymore, is it? Feels more fundamental?
That's the consensus, yeah. It's being called a ubiquitous structural trend, meaning it's weaving itself into, well, pretty much everything. How businesses run, the services they offer. It's not just a feature, it's becoming foundational.
Like electricity was, maybe.
Kind of, yeah. A fundamental shift.
Okay, so speaking of shifts, let's tackle this geopolitical puzzle. President Trump's frustration with Spain and NATO. It really starts with that core NATO agreement, the 2% rule, right?
It does, yeah. Back in 2014, all NATO members agreed they should aim to spend 2% of their GDP on defense. The idea was, fair burden sharing for collective security.
And Spain is currently not quite there.
Not quite, no. They're sitting at around 1.3% of GDP for 2024, so that's a pretty significant gap compared to the 2% target.
Okay, so that's the gap. And President Trump's point is basically that the U.S. is picking up way too much of the tab for NATO overall.
That's his argument, yeah. He points out the U.S. covers something like 70% of total NATO military spending, and he often calls out wealthy European countries, Germany and Spain specifically, for not meeting that 2% target. He sees it as them, getting a free ride on U.S. defense spending.
And he's been pretty blunt about it. If you don't pay, we won't protect you.
Extremely blunt. It's very much part of his America First message.
Right. But, okay, let's look at Spain's side. Why aren't they spending more? It can't just be, being cheap. There have to be reasons.
Oh, absolutely. There are deep historical and domestic factors at play. A big one is the legacy of the Franco dictatorship, which lasted until 1975. The military was seen as oppressive then, and that created a lasting kind of anti-militarism in Spanish society.
Ah, interesting. So there's a cultural resistance to big military spending.
Yeah, polls show it. Like in 2022, only about 35% of Spaniards actually supported a significant military spending increase. It's just not a popular idea for many people.
And then there's the economy, I assume.
Definitely. Spain struggles with high unemployment, especially among young people. It was over 30% in 2024. Plus, they have high public debt. So the government tends to prioritize spending on social programs, education, creating jobs. That's where the political pressure is.
Makes sense. Hard to sell big defense hikes when people need jobs and services.
Exactly. And the governing coalition includes left-wing parties like PSOE and Sumar, who strongly favor diplomacy over military buildup. Plus, increasing military spending could easily lead to voter backlash.
Okay, so history, economy, politics. What about their actual security situation? Do they feel threatened?
That's another factor. Being in southwestern Europe, they perceive less of a direct, immediate threat, especially compared to countries closer to Russia, like Poland or Finland.
Right, so less urgency.
Less public consensus for ramping up defense spending when the threat doesn't feel right on their doorstep. There's also a desire within Spain to build up their own defense industry, and just buying a ton of foreign equipment quickly wouldn't help that goal.
So it's a really complex mix on Spain's side.
Yeah.
You've got Trump's America First, questioning NATO's values, seeing it as a U.S. subsidy.
Right, and framing the U.S. burden as unfair to his base. Plus, let's be honest, higher defense spending by allies benefits U.S. defense contractors like Lockheed and Raytheon. There's an industrial angle, too.
Good point. And now NATO's actually pushing for an even higher target for 2025.
Yeah, things are escalating. In June 2025, NATO proposed a new target of 5% of GDP for defense spending. It's a huge jump, driven by the war in Ukraine and concerns about Russia.
5%? Wow. And Spain is the only country saying no to that.
That's right. They're the only NATO member publicly opposing the 5% target. They actually negotiated a sort of special deal to aim for just 2.1%, which is, barely above the old target.
Why oppose it so strongly? What's the official reasoning?
Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez basically said hitting 5% would wreck their budget. He wrote to NATO saying it would require massive tax hikes on the middle class and huge cuts to social welfare, green initiatives, foreign aid. He called it incompatible with our welfare state.
Okay, that frames it very differently. It's about their whole social model.
Exactly. Plus, his coalition government includes parties strongly against military hikes, and they're also dealing with some internal political scandals, which might make them cautious about big, controversial spending decisions. And Sanchez has reiterated that they just don't see Russia as a direct threat to Spain.
So how are the other NATO allies taking this? Spain getting a special deal while everyone else is pressured to hit 5%?
Not well, generally. Reports mention other European defense officials expressing disgust. Spain's been called the new problem child of NATO.
Ouch. Canada used to be the problem child, right?
Apparently so. Now it's Spain. The worry is that this special exemption undermines the whole idea of unity and shared burden. It looks unfair.
Yeah, you can see why. And just to see the numbers side by side for 2024. Spain's at 1.3%, aiming for 2.1%.
Right. Compare that to Poland at 3.9%, aim for 5%. Lithuania is at 2.8%, aiming for 5%. The U.S. is at 3.38%, pushing for 5%. Even Canada, at 1.4%, now supports the 5% goal. So Spain really stands out at the lower end.
It's like that analogy you mentioned. NATO is a joint company, and Trump's complaining the U.S. puts in 70% of the capital but can't fire the lazy employees.
It's a blunt way to put it, but that captures the frustration from that perspective.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Let's shift gears now to our final topic, AI investment. And we're looking through the lens of Coatue. Tell us a bit about them. Why are they a big deal in tech investment?
So Coatue is a pretty major investment management firm founded back in '99 by Philippe Lafont. They're global, New York, London, Shanghai, Hong Kong. They focus heavily on high-growth sectors, especially tech, media, telecom, but also consumer and healthcare. They invest across the board, public and private markets.
And why do people pay so much attention to their briefings and analysis?
Well, they have a reputation for really deep analysis and kind of forward-looking insights, particularly on tech trends like AI. They're very data-driven. They have this proprietary system called Mosaic, developed since 2014.
Mosaic, what's that?
Think of it like their secret sauce. It uses AI itself to analyze tons of different data points, anything from satellite images to app downloads to get a really granular view of market trends and company performance. Plus, their track record speaks for itself. They've backed major players like NVIDIA, Broadcom, OpenAI.
Okay, so they're definitely walking the walk. What are some of their recent takes, maybe from their 2025 East Meets West conference?
Some really eye-opening stuff. They pointed out that AI-related companies now make up something like 30-40% of the entire U.S. market cap.
30 to 40%.
Already.
Yeah, and they posed the question, could that number go over 75%? Which is just mind-blowing to think about the concentration of value.
75%. They have this great example. $1 invested in the NASDAQ 100 back in 1985 would be worth $228 today. That same dollar in the Dow Jones, about $90. Huge difference.
Incredible.
Philippe Lafont also gave his take on Bitcoin, noting its $2 trillion market cap is still only about 0.5% of global net assets. He thought it could potentially double or triple from here. So bullish on crypto, too.
Interesting. And they also want more big private tech companies to go public.
Yeah, they're pushing for that. Their view is that it's better for the market overall, more transparency, more liquidity, gives more investors access to these high-growth stories. And naturally, they're very optimistic about the big AI names like NVIDIA, Broadcom, Oracle, OpenAI.
Okay, let's break down that core AI ecosystem. Who are the absolute key players driving this? We know NVIDIA leads the hardware side.
Undisputed leader, yeah. GPUs are essential for AI compute. Their 2024 revenue was $130.5 billion, up 114%. They're making the picks and shovels for the AI gold rush, basically.
Astonishing numbers. And then you have the big cloud and software players,
Yeah.
Microsoft, Google, Amazon.
Exactly. Microsoft is huge in enterprise AI, working closely with OpenAI, and their Azure AI Foundry platform serves like 70,000 companies.
Wow.
Google, well, Alphabet, is pouring money, $75 billion planned for 2025, into infrastructure for models like Gemini, integrating AI everywhere from search to Gmail. Amazon, through AWS, has its own models like Bedrock and Nova and is really strong in using AI for advertising and search.
So hardware, enterprise solutions, infrastructure. What about Meta and Apple on the consumer side?
Meta's using its Llama model, their open source ones, to power AI features across its platforms, reaching 600 million users with Meta AI already. Apple's focus is more on privacy, doing AI processing on the device with their M3 chip for things like facial recognition, natural language stuff.
And the established tech players, IBM and Oracle, they're not sitting it out.
Not at all. IBM's Watson platform is still big in specific industries like healthcare and finance. They partnered with EY on an AI platform. Oracle's pushing its cloud AI services, partnered with NVIDIA, and they've even trained hundreds of thousands of AI professionals investing in the talent pipeline.
So what's the common thread with all these giants? Why are they so dominant in AI?
Scale, really. Their massive market caps let them invest billions in R&D that almost no one else can match. And their global reach means they can deploy AI across every layer, from the basic hardware, to the complex software, to the consumer apps and the business solutions. They cover the whole stack.
But it's not only them, right? There are other critical companies enabling this whole thing.
Oh, for sure. You absolutely need companies like Taiwan Semiconductor, TSM. They actually make the advanced chips for companies like NVIDIA. They're the world's biggest foundry.
Crucial link.
Totally. And ASML in the Netherlands, they make the incredibly complex EUV lithography machines needed to produce those cutting-edge AI chips. Without them, you don't get the most advanced hardware.
Right.
Then you have software companies like Adobe building AI like Firefly and Sensei right into their creative tools. And even Tesla, primarily a car company, but their work on autonomous driving is heavy AI, making them a key player in that application space.
So looking ahead, what's the overall market forecast for AI? Is this growth sustainable?
The projections are still huge. IDC, for example, sees the global AI market growing from around $235 billion in 2024 to over $631 billion by 2028.
Wow, almost tripling.
Yeah. And NVIDIA is expected to keep leading, especially in the data center space. Their revenue has just exploded since ChatGPT launched. The key trend is really the deeper integration of AI, hardware, and software working together. That's what's going to keep driving the ecosystem forward. It feels like we're still in the early innings.
Well, that was quite a tour. We covered the market swings, the surprising tariff income, dug deep into the whole Trump-Spain NATO dynamic, and then surfed the AI investment wave with Cotu's insights.
Yeah, it really shows how connected everything is, doesn't it? Global economics, geopolitics, technology trends, they all influence each other in pretty complex ways.
Absolutely. Understanding these connections is, well, pretty helpful for just making sense of the headlines, let alone anything else.
It affects everyone, directly or indirectly.
So here's something for you, our listener, to chew on. Thinking about these big shifts, economic policy changes, the strains on global alliances, the sheer speed of AI development, how do you see these forces changing things in your own world, professionally or personally, over the next few years?
Yeah, definitely something to think about.
It really is. Okay, before we wrap up, please do subscribe to Sip and Talk wherever you listen so you don't miss our next conversation. And hey, quick shout out to our old buddy Mickey. Check out his YouTube channel, Mickytolife.
Yeah.
He's got memes, music, wine tasting, travel vlogs, all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a look. Go check it out.
You won't regret it.
See you next time on Sip and Talk.